Hey everyone, welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Boykin. I'm here in haunted Brookdale, California. Stoked to be in the new studio spot for like our third, I think, live stream since I changed locations. Um, Almost have all of the new gear set up. Looking forward to I don't know, a new beginning or whatever Star Wars movie that was. I am joined by my better than your co-host Glory Jones. Glory, it's good to see you. How you doing? How you feeling? All done with whatever
But
Johnny Button's illness that you got?
yeah, there's no Star Wars movie called A New Beginning, by the way. Just wanted to point that out. It's a new hope, if that's what you're referring to.
Sure. So a couple of weeks ago, before we left for DC, I'd been talking with Eva Bartlett, who's a friend of the show and who I'd been wanting to get on to talk about why she'd left the Mideast, why she went up to Serbia and Ukraine to cover stories there. And she said, I would love to, but first you have to have this guy on. Otherwise your audience is going to have no idea what I'm talking about. So she suggested that we have this gentleman on. His name's Dean O'Brien, his correspondent from the United Kingdom, who's been covering the conflict in the Donbass region in the Ukraine. And this is something really that like almost the entire West is ignorant of. And so because it's specifically being ignored by Western media, we're going to be talking about it because that's what we do here. So joining us is Dean O'Brien. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you, and I have no idea how this is going to go, my friend. So we're just going to kind of get into it. How you doing? How are things in the UK, and what the hell is going on in Donbass?
Fine. Thank you for having me on. Well, like you say, I'm from the UK. I'd been travelling previously for 10 years as a photographer, going backwards and forwards from Ukraine. Then in sort of 2014, they had what they called the Maidan, which is kind of like when the legally elected government in Ukraine was overthrown. As we all know, America had a big hand in that. Okay, they financed the coup. The legally elected government was overthrown. That then, in cause, started a civil war, which is what we've got today. It's heading into its 8th year now. We never see it reported. People are dying every day. People are being shelled out of their homes. People are starving. They're having food cut off. It's just never ending. And I just thought, you know what? I need to be writing about this. And a couple of other correspondents had been there before me. Western media don't want to cover it. Main organisations like the BBC have had their accreditation pulled because they, according to the residents there, they wrote a lot of lies about them, so their press accreditation has been denied. So it's down to people like myself to go out there and report.
I mean, that's it. When you like every time you hear it, right? It's like, really, or is that how they're going to do business? And then you remember, of course, that's how they do business.
Yeah.
So what have you discovered as you've been reporting on this? Like, what's the backstory here? Why, and really, ultimately, why should we give a damn?
Well, the backstory here was when I was going to Ukraine, like I say, for the past 10 years, their national language is Russian. If you go to Ukraine, everyone speaks Russian. All the shop signs are in Russian, everything, okay? Ukraine, their own language is kind of secondary. They kind of speak it at home or with their grandmothers. But if you went out in the street, you went to a restaurant, everyone speaks Russian, period. That's it. When 2014 started, the right-wing nationalists, you had Pravi Sector, Right Sector, Svoboda Party, Freedom Party, you had Corpus, all these right-wing nationalist groups. Many were escorting the police around the streets, making sure they enforced what they called the Decommunization rules, which was shops not selling Russian products. So you had these like skinheads escorting the police, making sure they're enforcing the law. How does that even happen in the Western world these days? So you've got the far right on the rise. Then they were telling people they need to speak Ukrainian now, not Russian. A lot of these people are like, what the hell? I'm 34 years old. I've never spoken Ukrainian in my life. What am I going to do? So the people in the East, they're culturally more connected with, let's just say, with their Russian heritage than mainly people in the west of Ukraine, for example. So you've got this division already happening. It's caused massive problems. Then they started ripping the statues down of Lenin, their history, you know, and this all happened. There's the far right whole torchlight parades there. Don't even start me on the marches they have defending the Galician SS divisions that are allowed to walk down the streets. This happens every year. Torchlight parades, you know, reminiscent of 1930s Germany. But you know what? We shouldn't report on that because the West don't report on it. So I went there, started sending some pictures out. Again, it doesn't want to get picked up by British media for their own reasons. So there you go. And I went out there and thought, I'll just carry on. It had this knock-on effect then. It then spilled into a civil war. The people in the East said, we don't want the fascists coming here, tearing down our monuments and our statues and telling us what language we can speak. And you've got this massive divide. Obviously, because of the threat to these people here, volunteers from Russia, not Russian soldiers from what I saw, volunteers from Russia came to the aid of the people in the east of Ukraine, set up their own militia divisions to defend the people there. And now you've actually got like a full-scale war going on.
I mean, really, this is something that, like,
Yeah.
if I wasn't already like friends with Eva Bartlett, I wouldn't know about this shit. I wouldn't. It just there's not an utterance of it in Western media. And if you like just take a little step back and remember, or at least, you know, pay attention to what you were saying about this, or, you know, starting earlier in about 2014, that's the, you know, peak Obama years, as we were working hand in glove with Ukrainian neo-Nazis in order to take over their government, in order to, you know, like, I guess, posture the West more aggressively against Russia ultimately, but at the expense of the Ukrainian people.
Of course. I mean, strategically, Ukraine's very important to the West, to America. They want to be knocking on Russia's door, poking that bear. They can't stop. Why not just leave them alone?
I mean, hegemony and consolidation of wealth and power, and the absolute dominating, all-encompassing greed, I would imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really what it boils
Yeah.
to.
And I mean, it's fascinating to see the difference between, like, obviously what you're saying and what Eva Bartlett is reporting from the ground in Donbass versus, like, the narrative that was put out, especially in 2014, as it was like, you know, Russia invading Ukraine with no mention of this fact that a lot of Ukrainians in the East specifically are like have bigger ties to their Russian heritage. I just find that very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, culturally, I mean, the thing is, what they've said is they don't want a war. They just want to be able to retain their traditions and heritage. And it's shared across Ukraine. I met many people when I could go to the government-controlled side of Ukraine. I mean, I obviously can't travel back there now. But when I went there, I spoke to lots of people who were kind of like pro-Russian, if that's the phrase. But they obviously had to keep quiet about it because they fear arrest now, and obviously anything else, violence that goes with it.
I'm trying to like wrap my head around where most of the media has been for the last 15 months, you know, because what's the timeline on active, like, conflict that causes casualties and massive property damage? Like, has that been starting in Donbass since is that a 7-year ongoing thing, or is this more recent?
It's been an ongoing thing. The past, it's been non-stop anyway, but the past sort of, I'll say, month has seen a huge escalation there. And what we're seeing is the frontline villages where pensioners live. they're having their homes shelled. There's plenty of pictures being tweeted out there. They come from reliable sources, and these people can't understand. I mean, they're being shelled because they're trying to be forced out of their properties by the Ukrainian forces, trying to push them back. But you have to remember, these people have got nowhere else to go. You know, they've lived in these villages all their life. They grow their own food. You can't go and throw them in the middle of a city somewhere because they'll end up begging in a metro, you know, the metro station that, you know, they grow their own food. They get their water from a well. They've lived in these villages all their lives and generations beforehand. So they're not going to be pushed out of homes by the Ukrainian army or anybody else. They're being shelled. I mean, I don't know what the proper rules of engagement are for war, but surely you can't shell civilians because you want to gain space.
Yeah, no. You're definitely against rules of engagement. And what's the excuse? Is there, or is this just done with impunity because nobody gets to push back?
I think it's done with impunity. I mean, they do have people there called the OSCE who are supposed to monitor these things, but you see all these memes regarding OSCE, and it always shows them with like blind glasses and a white stick, that kind of thing, because apparently they're quite selective about what they choose to report on. Also, they say that Ukrainians kind of see the OSCE arrive in the village, they stop shelling, then the minute they move out, they start shelling again. It's just a proper cat and mouse game. But, you know, the people there have had enough, really, but they've made it quite clear they're going nowhere, but they happen to hide in basements. I've seen knowing the children killed there. It's just amazing that it's never on the news.
And how are the people in Donbass reacting to how this conflict is received by the public via the mainstream media through either just like propaganda or just the lack of coverage at all? How do they feel about that?
They feel heavily let down. I mean, obviously they understand where Britain and America stand because they're financially assisting Ukrainian armed forces, giving financial aid. We're also sending soldiers there that are training Ukrainian soldiers. Apparently we're not supposed to be putting any foot soldiers on the ground, but we are training them in the use of drones, that kind of thing. It's proper modern warfare that's going on out there. People know, and this is probably why Western media aren't keen to report either, that when you show the pictures of these shelling, it is down to the West that are backing this.
And this is also the Ukrainian nationalists can de-Russify the country, essentially.
Well, they've got regulations in place now. It's the law. They're called Decommunization laws, and you're not allowed to publicly display any Soviet symbols. In the Donbass region, they wear something called a St. George's ribbon, which is an orange and black striped ribbon. That's kind of like their symbol. It's a symbol that people have worn on Victory Day for years, since kind of like 1945. That's a banned symbol now. You can't display anything like Lenin or anything like that. It's all very frowned upon. You can get arrested. They've got these regulations in place. They've started removing kind of plaques that have still got the hammer and sickle on. I mean, these are off like buildings that are like years old, and they're just removing all the symbols. Equivalent of book burning, to be honest. They're trying to erase the history, the past.
Yeah, well, and to kind of like my basic understanding of the history of the region, it's something that's always been either with, you know, Ukraine or with the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union. So is kind of that decommunization you refer to, is that something that applies to Russian culture as a whole, included with this all the kind of Soviet culture?
Yeah, I mean, this is what got me, because I travelled to Moscow back in September, and although they're not under communist leadership now, they still have all the Lenin monuments and everything, and people respect their past. They may not agree with it, but they're allowed to stand because it is part of their history. That's what made that country what it is. It's all part of this, and you have to remember that it was those Soviets that beat Nazis in the first place, the Soviets. And they've always got these big monuments. They lost 27 million in the between 41 and 45. You know, and not many people know that. I didn't learn that at school. I didn't know the Russians were even involved in overthrowing Nazis. I had to find that out for myself. So we've got this block as well on, and we're very selective about what we teach children about the war. But the Soviets defeated the Nazis. It wasn't the West. The West came in afterwards. Okay, 27 million people they lost. So naturally, they want to preserve their war monuments and everything else. And this is the ironic thing. In Ukraine, they're tearing down these monuments that celebrate their grandfathers and grandmothers as well, who were tank drivers and everything. And they're ripping these down. And they don't really understand that they wouldn't be there if it weren't for them. So if you don't agree with that, at least kind of respect the monuments. And the pensioners go there and lay flowers, that kind of thing. And all these have been torn down. So people do want to remember their Soviet heritage. And towards the east of Ukraine, obviously, they feel a bigger attraction to it because that's culturally where they place themselves.
I mean, this kind of gets into a I don't know, larger, more esoteric conversation about like borders or nationalities. But if the people in a region are like culturally identify, in this particular case, with Russia, right? Yeah. And that's what the reality is that the east of Ukraine culturally identifies with Russia. Then essentially you've got to, like, I don't know, undo their being in order to get them to assimilate, which is something that most people are highly unwilling to do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they've got their own new republics now. When I visited out there, they've made it fairly clear, you know, they want peace, but there's no way they're going to give up the new republics. You know, they've survived there now for over 7 years. They've got sanctions imposed. You know, when you go there, you can't use your mobile phone. You have to have a local SIM card because there's a block on. If you're a Westerner, you can't use your cell phone there, so you have to buy a local SIM card. Obviously, your credit cards won't work there. There's no electronic kind of thing because the banking system, they've done a block on these new republics also. But you know what? You get by. It's not the end of the world. I think the West thought putting these sanctions on, they'd finish these new republics, but it's much bigger than that. People have said, bring the sanctions on, you know, keep bringing them. The people there don't want war. They're just defending. But they've said they're not going to give up the new republics. Lugansk and Donetsk, they're staying as they are, but they do want peace. And I think both sides have to sit down and talk. The Ukrainian government, sooner or later, have to turn around and say, look, how are we going to move forward with this?
What?
And real quick, what's kind of the timeline for the establishment of these republics?
Well, it was around about Maidan 2014 when the legally elected president was overthrown. And then you kind of like, it was in 2014. So around about all that time, what happened was there was civil unrest in the east of the country. Ukrainian forces headed over there. Many got there. And when they got there, a lot handed over their vehicles and guns initially because they said, we're not fighting our own people, our own brothers. Then what happened was the right wing got involved. They formed militia units and headed out there themselves. And you got this. And that was where it all started from. Militia units were formed in the east. And it started from there. And they declared their own republic, started taking over government buildings, getting rid of the Ukrainian flag, putting up their own new republic. And it kind of happened like that. But that was the catalyst. Once the coup had happened and the legally elected government had been overthrown, the people took their own control in the east.
I mean, that just, it sounds like, I don't know. The whole thing's so incredibly messy because we've got, at the root of it, we've just got people who want to, you know, live and be left alone. But there's a larger conflict being played out, it sounds like, using this particular instance as a micro of the larger thing, because essentially it's like NATO and neo-Nazis working together to push back Russia out of the Ukraine, or eliminate Russian influence, or eliminate Russian cultural I don't know. I guess cross-pollination with the Ukraine. Do I have that right, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, I mean, it's working hand in hand. Obviously, on the legal side of things, they're saying it's NATO. They're doing their training exercises right on the border with other countries, right on Russia's doorstep. Uh, they want Ukraine, basically. You know, the far right, they're just useful cannon fodder. They're doing all the dirty work.
Is there a like resource acquisition thing? Is there like rare earth minerals in Ukraine? Why is it just a strategic for like pipelines and shipping lanes and stuff like that? Like, what's the pull?
I think it's more strategic. It's like when Russia annexed Crimea. They'd always have the Black Sea fleet down there. When I visited Crimea in September, I was there for almost a month, and when I spoke to people there, apparently they said it was common knowledge that the Russians had been there for years, their Black Sea fleet, and apparently they said it was the only place in Ukraine at the time the currency was rubles. It was Russian rubles, even though it was Ukraine back then. But they said that America had plans to put ships in down there, to put a little base in there as well, and apparently, from what I was told, that only enforced the reason then of Putin wanting to pull Crimea back in, to rein it back in. I mean, why would America want to do that? Why would you want to stick ships right in front of Russia, really?
I mean, again, it's it's global hegemony. I mean, really, it's it sounds trite or weird, but it's world domination. That's what the U.S. or the West is essentially after, and if that means, you know, crushing innocent men, women, and children in order to annex land or steal it outright, they seem to be perfectly willing to do that. When you're on the ground and you're talking to people who live in this area, like, I mean, how are you received? You're from the UK. You're there as a photojournalist. You're not trying to like really sell anybody anything. Like, do you get a pass a little bit more easily, or like, I mean, how are you personally treated, and like, what have your interactions with people in the area been?
They're normally pretty good. I mean, you have to remember, initially, obviously, when you're entering the Donbass region, you're from the west. So there are a lot of questions as to get into that region, because obviously they're asking, why do you want to come here? Because the only Westerners that have got an interest in Ukraine are obviously the ones that are backing the Ukrainian government. So, but it does work in your favour being a freelancer, that you don't work for any mainstream media, because I've said what I'll see, I'll post, I just tweet straight away, and it's great that it doesn't have to be cleared by anybody. I check my own sources. If I go and speak to somebody on the street, once I'm happy with the facts, I'll tweet it. I don't have to get clearance off anybody, or some news agency saying, well, we don't think we should run with that at the moment because of what's happening. If it's happening, let's run it. It's as simple as that. So, but people have been very welcoming. I speak a little bit of Russian. I'm not fluent. That always goes a long way to kind of greeting people. I show them places that I've been. I let them know a little bit about myself. It's great, and I to be honest, I don't mean to sound very gung-ho here, but I'll go where the most dangerous bits are. I mean, I remember when I went last time, I went to a position called Yasnavata, which is one of the hottest zones there. It's a position surrounded on three sides. I mean, Ukrainian forces are about 200 meters away, and it is a hot zone. And I can remember when I went there, I said to the guys, I said, I was wandering around. They'd give me what they call it a gilet, which is a vest and a helmet. And he was trying to hold me back from places. And I said, but I need to come and see for myself. And he said, listen, he said, what it is, he said, I don't want anything happening to you. He said, because you can imagine what they'll say. Oh, this English guy went there. Look what the Russians done to him, And I says, oh, so I didn't really think of it like that. He said, yeah. He says, so as much as I know you want to cover things, he said, I really have to look after you as well. But I went there. There are no Russian soldiers there, because that's kind of like the myth. When you go there, these are all Russian battalions. They're not. these are guys that are in kind of mismatched combat uniforms. They're wearing Crocs. That you know, and they're just guys that are like at the end of their shifts when they've done their kind of turnaround, which could be a couple of weeks, whatever. They're getting the bus home with some bread and milk for their wife and kids. You know, they're just normal guys. So when I was sat there and I ate with them and I was talking with them and that, you realise that I'm always interested in people's stories, you know, because I always say to them, what were you doing before this started? You know, what was the catalyst for you? And these guys, some of them were like plumbers, some worked in IT. And one of the big catalysts was what happened in Odessa. They had the trade union house fire where a large number of pro-Russian supporters were burnt alive. And when people saw that, all over Ukraine, a lot of people just dropped what they were doing and went to the east to kind of assist the militia battalions. But all these people were telling me their stories, but they're just normal people, you know. But like they said, the problem is that they're fighting a much larger Ukrainian army, but the Ukrainian army, the guys are paid. You know, they're not doing it with the heart. A lot of them are doing it because it's a job and it's a country where it's quite hard to earn good money. So it's like any of those kind of political wars, really. The people in the east, the militia guys there, that they're not doing it for the money.
And this is largely just to stamp out Russian cultural influence to make Ukraine a Ukrainian nationalist state. Is that, or are there like larger like economic underpinnings that I'm missing?
Well, they are good. Like I say, they've changed all the street signs now. Anything, if it's named like Lenin Street or anything like that, all those street names have to be changed. They're changing metro station names if they're Soviet. So they're trying to erase any Soviet past. If you see these, they've got these things called Soviet mosaics. They're on sort of schools and buildings. They're amazing works of art. They're being defaced now. Hammers and sickles removed off them. I mean, they're just historical. You look at them and they're from a time gone by. And if you talk to the pensioners there, they say it was a much better time. You know, you had no drugs, no prostitution. Everybody had a roof over their head. So that's what they think of communism. You know, this great thing about independence and capitalism didn't work out. It hasn't worked out at all for them.
Well, certainly not.
Yeah.
Certainly not in Russia, where it was just Western influenced gangsters that basically like kind of took over there. And then, yeah, I mean, when communism collapsed, and I'm not trying to make an argument for it, I wasn't there for it. I don't know what it was like. I don't, you know, I'm not going to say good, bad. That's not my job here. I just when what I'm going to do is look at it just from, you know, a historical lens, though. But when the basis of the economic system and who got paid went from like state capitalism to unfettered capitalism, at least in Soviet Russia, it was. I mean, it was just as laissez-faire capitalist as you could possibly get, from what I understand, from what I've been able to witness, and from the people that I've talked to. Just gangster fucking capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, Ukraine's the same. If you go to Ukraine now, central Kiev, it's like strip clubs. It's all that sleaze that comes with it. You know, you've got this massive divide. You've got like Maseratis and Bugattis everywhere, and then you've got people on their knees begging in the street. It just does not make sense. It's like you're walking in some kind of parallel universe. Of course, strange thing is as well, you know, there are just mobs and mobs of like kind of like skinhead gangs, kind of thing that I remember seeing in the UK in the 80s. You know, and they seem to be, they wear not the black, what they call pilot jackets, MA1 jackets, and they've got
White jackets, yeah.
Yeah, and they don't wear swastikas, but they wear what they call runic signs, Nordic symbols. They're kind of like the nearest thing you can get to a swastika, if you like, without kind of breaking any kind of law.
Okay.
And I'm just curious, have you like talked to any of them in Ukraine, or like, kind of what's their presence like on the ground in the Donbass region?
Which anyone specific?
Particularly with just like Ukrainian nationalists or like skinheads or like anyone who's kind of not like pro the agenda that the West is pushing in the region.
Yeah, I mean, in Donbass, for example, I mean, anyone that was pro-Ukrainian nationalist has probably gone back over to that side now anyway. So they will be kind of like on the other side, if you like. Donbass is amazing. It's a very clean city. It's beautiful. They've got a curfew there at the moment. I think it's like between 10 and 6. I think that was down to there was having assassinations there that were going on. So there is that curfew. So you've got no gangs or anything like that. It's very disciplined. It's a nice socialist republic. What's going on? It feels very different to anything else. When I was in kind of like Kiev, obviously you've got the gangs there, the skinhead gangs. They keep themselves to themselves, but you know you're seeing a lot of white power marches, a lot of nationalism. Kiev's not a nice place to be at the moment. I remember reading a Lonely Planet guide, probably 9 years ago, and it basically said if you've got dark skin, you need to be careful. They phrased it a little bit differently, but it put it bluntly. But I kind of like that because you want to understand what they're saying. You don't want them to sugarcoat it, because when you're walking around the streets of Kiev, I've seen it, and if you're black or you're kind of like Asian, like people from the east of Russia, for example, they look very Oriental. They need to get them visitors in Kiev. You'll get abuse on the street. It's as simple as that. It's not a comfortable place to be. There's a proper nationalist uprising there going right across Ukraine at the moment. Although Donbass is a conflict zone, you'd feel much safer in the east, without a doubt.
Hectic. It is. I just on the show all the time, Dean. The refrain is we live in a fucking cartoon, and if you would have told me 10 years ago that the first black president would help destabilize Ukraine to usher in an era of rule by neo-Nazi, I would have laughed in your face. I would have, even as cynical as I was 10 years ago. And yet here we are. I know that you said that the people in the region want peace, and that makes incredible amounts of sense to me, because if I lived in a war-torn region, I would also want peace. But in terms of like steps to that, like are there people who have emerged as kind of like, I don't know, not necessarily political, but sort of even like civic leaders that could represent the East or even Donbass in some sort of like ceasefire negotiation or something like that? Or how is that working out?
There is some agreements in place, like for ceasefires and stuff, but they don't hold. They just don't hold. You know, and there's nobody there to kind of like reliably kind of do something about it. I mean, I think it's going to end up like a situation like you had in Northern Ireland with the IRA. Sooner or later, they're going to have to come to some agreement and sit down and talk. And I know people talk about the amount of deaths. Over 13,000 people have been killed. And as harsh as it sounds, you're not going to bring them back, you know, and it's terrible. But it will take some sort of agreement where Ukraine take the hit and sort of say, look, we're going to have to let these people in the East get on with it. But you can't keep shelling them. And technically, they are shelling their own people as well, because these people were Ukrainian citizens. So the army have turned on their own people. They're shelling their own people out of their homes. It's absolute madness.
So the republics that they formed were in response to this. They didn't just wake up one day and say, we're going to be autonomous. Fuck you.
No. It was in response to this. And that was that, really. And they've developed their own country. They've got their own flags. They've got their own, their own politicians. They have the military units. Only a couple of them stand now because they did formed them all into a proper army. So they've got their own army, police force, fire service, you know, the whole works. I mean, they are proper independent countries. The only thing is that the West refused to recognise them. But, you know, that's how it is at the moment. But they do need some sort of committee or something on both sides where they're going to have to sit down and talk and work this out. They just can't keep killing people day in, day out.
I mean, you'd hope not. And so
Yeah.
with sanctions and with like the production of locally oriented SIM cards and stuff like that, like where's the trade coming from? How is that working? Or is everything like being produced in country?
Well, at the moment they're getting humanitarian aid from Russia. Okay, that's happened from day one. They're bringing in the food and everything. There is some trade that's going on. Now, one thing I would want to point out is, particularly from the Ukraine side, that are shelling these people. As you know, with many wars around the world, it benefits a certain number of people to keep this war going. They're getting rich from it. And this isn't unique to Ukraine. It's happening, lots of conflicts around the world. So we've got that to put into perspective as well. People are getting rich off this, and it's in their interest to keep it going.
Do we know the names of the people who are getting rich off of this? Can we say their names and hope that by doing so, more people hold them accountable?
No, they probably know. They know anyway. It'll be in Ukraine. A lot of it is governments and politicians. They know they're getting kickbacks. It really is crooked. So much money goes astray from the Ukrainian government. They get a lot from America, and it just seems to disappear. It doesn't get spent on what it's meant to be spent on, put it that way.
Well,
And do
over them for blackmail in case they ever try to like investigate a vice president's kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do resources play into that at all? Because Donbass would be a big coal mining region, or does that play into it at all, or is it more so?
It is. That's why Ukraine kind of want Donbass back, because of the coal. I do believe they are still exporting coal. I think it has to go through Russia now and be distributed that way. But yeah,
I'm seeing in the chat, Ukraine has the second largest coal deposits in Europe, seventh largest in the world, and also has natural gas resources and other mineral resources as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, as a jumping off point for U.S. or Western foreign policy, it comes down to either resource acquisition or labor pool exploitation. It really, ultimately, like if there's something under your ground that will benefit the West, we will come take it.
Of course, yeah. Without a doubt. I mean, one thing is that I want to say as well, in the villages such as Golovka, which comes under tremendous shelling, which it has done from day one, people live there and they're without water, gas and electricity. And many have been like that for 7 years. And you kind of think how people live like that, but they do. And whenever they kind of send out somebody from the electricity board to try and repair the lines, they come under sniper fire. So they can't repair. They can't make the repairs that are needed. And this is an ongoing thing as well.
I remember hearing a World War II story where like they kept cutting the same like telegraph line like every single day. And every single day the Germans would send someone up to repair it. And that person would get shot, and they did this for like 6 weeks until some bright spark was like, why don't we just move the telegraph line? And that's the point of the story. It is just the sheer futility of like the dogged determination of sending that one poor schmuck a day to go get his head blown off because you haven't thought far enough ahead to move the fucking line.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's war.
Oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, this stuff infuriates me. I don't even know try and get into a conversation like this, but like I don't understand the mentality behind mowing down hundreds or thousands of civilians just so you can rip some shit out of the ground. I really don't. Like, I don't understand that mentality. And I don't understand why, like, people have to be used as literal human sacrifices so that a handful of people can line their pockets.
Yeah, of course.
Seems to be the case here.
Yeah.
Well, and the strategic power grab as well. Just not being able to stand the fact that there might be another competing power with the US, especially one in such a resource rich area. It sucks to think that, especially the narratives that are generated around this whole thing, that just completely lie by omission almost, and gloss over the fact that these are people proud of their heritage, and just for that they're suffering. Yeah.
We had a question in the chat, Dean, from Proletariat. Thank you for the tip, by the way. It's Stevie, thank you. Where did it go? It jumped. What do we think the future of Ukraine looks like depending on who replaces Putin?
That's a tough question. Honestly don't know. I mean, the Russians like Putin. A lot of Polish state they love Putin. So they could get replaced with somebody that's still got his values, that that hold the same sort of political opinion. Ukraine's future looks a mess, with or without Putin anyway. They're doing a good enough job of that themselves. Shelling their own people, and turning a blind eye to it. I mean, I don't think the future is very good for Ukraine at all, regardless of whether Putin's in power in Russia or not.
Well, it seems like, at least at this point in the story, they're heavily dependent on, I guess, I don't know, I want to say like benevolence of, or kindness of, but kind of the Russian government. So it would, I mean, at least from today's conversation and what I've been able to piece together just over the last several years of being, peripherally aware of this, without a beneficent Russian state, those people are well fucked and far from home. It is kind of what it looks like from here.
That's it in a nutshell, pretty much. I mean, there's two ways that the new republics can go. Number one, they could get integrated into Russia, okay, a bit like Crimea, okay, become part of the Russian Federation fully, okay. Many people there do want that. The problem is this: a lot of people think if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now, okay. So, but yeah, without the aid from Russia, they'd be struggling. It would be terrible. They do rely on the humanitarian aid coming from Russia. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, so these republics, they're obviously not recognized by any countries in NATO or any of the West in general, but are they recognized by kind of the East or any countries in the global South? Like, is there anyone that actually recognizes their independence?
Russia. There may be a couple of others, but it's mainly Russia. those people in Donbass have got their own passports. Again, they're not recognised, obviously, so but they can hold Russian passports as well, and many have got those now. So that enables them to kind of travel around the world, if you like, with a Russian passport.
Okay, yeah, interesting. And like going kind of following up on the passport thing as well, like Russia recognizes their independence, but what would be kind of the specific interest in integrating them to be a part of Russia?
I think it makes things a lot easier for the people there because of things like work, things like pensions, that kind of thing at the moment. And the people in the republics, if they've got a pension, they still need to try and claim it from government-controlled Ukraine, which means they have to cross an internal border. It's very complicated, very confusing. It's quite a long journey for many of them as well to make to go and get that pension and draw it out. So becoming part of Russia just gives them more security. Again, it would stop the shelling as well. Ukraine will shell its own people, but they wouldn't shell those republics if they were part of Russia, for sure. Because they'd technically be shelling Russia, which is something they don't want to be doing.
Yeah. And when you talk with people, do you find that they're more inclined towards overall independence or integration into Russia?
It's 50-50. Many people would like their independence. Obviously, if they could remain in an ideal world, kind of like financially stable and independent. Realistically, I don't see that happening. There's too many restrictions on it. So I'd say the majority would like to become part of Russia. They would like to become part of the Russian Federation.
You're muted, Steve.
There we go. How many people roughly are we talking about that make up the Donbass region?
That's hard to say. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It's very hard to say because figures are very mixed, and lots of people fled. Some from Donbass had the opportunity. They kind of went to Russia as well to try and find work. So I couldn't get you a proper figure on that.
And these are people who are incentivized to go when they flee, go anywhere but the West, right?
Yeah, I mean, some, if they did have an empathy towards Ukraine, or some people did go to Ukraine if they've got family there. You know, they kind of went there and they thought, well, they're just going to have to suck it up, really, and you know, do what they've got to do. Others said they're going to stick it out in the new republics and try and, you know, make a better life for themselves. And others went to Russia. But it was a mess. I mean, before this conflict started, a common situation in Ukraine is that a lot of people, because there's more women in Ukraine than men, you know, that's a well-known fact. So a lot of people have Ukrainian mothers, Russian fathers. So you would have people sitting around the dinner table where you might see yourself more as pro-Russian, but your sister would see herself ethnically more as Ukrainian. And there's no right or wrong about it. And they could kind of laugh and joke around the dinner table until the conflict started, until the killing started, and it split families up. And that was it then. It wasn't banter anymore, basically. It was a real thing.
Jesus. I mean, that's just heavy to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very different concept about my own personal national identity, so I have a hard time getting violent over something like that. Like no, mom's Ukrainian, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and murder cousin Dan now. Like I don't just it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make light of this either. I'm not.
Yeah.
Like this serious shit. It's just if I have to process and deal with serious shit, I'm most likely going to try and crack a joke because that's how I guess hide from the horror of all of this. I don't really know a better way to put that. I really don't. Dean, we've been going about an hour, and Glory and I have another show in about an hour. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us today and to let us know about this. If there's anything that you would like to leave the audience with, please do so, and please let everyone know where they can find your work and help support you, so that, like, you know, independent journalism can still occur in this area and we can still get some sort of real information coming out from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put my work on Twitter. I've got a Patreon page as well. If you guys could put a link on that somewhere, whether it's on your YouTube or
Absolutely.
on Twitter and that, and yeah, people can hook up on there. But I'd just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity for to come on and, you know, just let people know what I found. Like I said, I'm not paid by anybody. I work for no organisation, so I just went out there because I figured it was the right thing to do. And when you've got people being shelled out your homes, they've got no food, you know, we're not in this world forever, and it's good to be able to go out and do something good for people, you know, to tell the truth about what's happening out there as well.
So patreon.com/Dean O'Brien. And we'll put your PayPal link in the description too, Dean. Yeah, I can't thank you enough. James, thank you for the tip over on the rock fin. Oh, that's a message from Corey. And I think Glory Jones, what do you got?
Yeah, thanks for coming on and just like really educating us and and showing people something that Western media, a lot of independent media, all of mainstream media just flat out won't show you. It was really interesting, and just, yeah, thanks for answering all our questions, and never buy Western propaganda. Yeah.
Love it. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks again, Dean. Thanks
Bye-bye.
again, Dean O'Brien. Very, very stoked to have that. I can't tell time, so we're coming back in 2 hours for Corey Morningstar. It's been a long week, in case I haven't made that perfectly clear. I do feel like I'm on the upward trajectory.
Yay! Woo! That's good to hear, at least.
Right? I mean, look, man, sometimes it takes me a minute to pull my head out of my ass.
I know. It happens to all of us, Steve.
So we're gonna be coming back. Corey just asked me if we had read part 3 of the Social Dilemma series.
I did.
I'm gonna tell her yes, because I did, and so I think we're gonna open talking about that.
Yes. I mean, okay. I mean, like, I know I'm saying it like yes, but like that's because I can't wait for the conversation, not because of the subject material at hand, because it is really horrible subject material.
For real. So we've got some homework for you guys too, if you haven't and you would like to. Read part 3 of Corey Morningstar's Social Dilemma series. Glory and I have done like extensive shows on the first 2 parts of this. We also had an in-depth interview with Corey about the first 2 parts of that series. It may have been like 3 or 4 months ago, but it kind of feels like 3 or 4 years ago. Oh my God, dude, it really fucking does. It's been a hectic 2021, y'all.
It has.
Yeah. I think that'll do it. We'll be back at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, with the one and only Corey Morningstar. Want to thank Dean O'Brien one more
time. On Rockfin?
Huh?
On Rockfin?
Oh yeah, the Corey Morningstar thing we are gonna do as our Rockfin only.
Yes.
So if you haven't, you need to go make that free Rockfin account sometime in the next 2 hours.
If you want to see our full Corey interview, you gotta get on the Rockfins.
True, we're
and
only
we might put a little clip on YouTube, just a little something for y'all. But if you want the full thing, you gotta get on Rockfin.
And we're gonna start doing that regularly. Like we're on YouTube, you might get 15 minutes of an interview, but if you want the full thing, you're gonna have to watch it on Rockfin. And we won't set that behind premium for like 48 hours. But going forward, we are going to start doing more premium shows, and pretty much like the only way you're going to get most of our Whitney Webb or Johnny Vedmore or Last American Vagabond or Jared Beck stuff is by having a premium Rockfin membership. Sorry, but we're taking the show full time, and like that, it's fucking really fucking expensive to live here. And even more expensive to move. That's the fucked up thing. It really is. Like once you get here, you're fucking stuck unless you get rich, or you just go start with abso-fucking-lutely nothing, which I've done. It's just not much fun. Well, y'all, we'll see you back here in a little bit. Thanks again to Dean O'Brien. Thanks, Sleepy Josh, on the ones and twos. My better than your co-host, Glory Jones. We love you guys out there in the chat crew. Big thanks again to everybody who threw Rockfin tips, and to DJ Elf and the YouTube chat for the super chat. Yeah, man, you guys are fucking awesome. We love you. We'll see you soon. Good luck.
Love y'all.